Hello, everyone, and thanks for taking the time to review the Saratoga, California, May 2008 real estate market analysis. My name is Robert Whitelaw. I'm a licensed real estate broker in the state of California. I'm also a member of the National Association of Realtors and a certified ePro. Now let's go ahead and jump right in and take a look at the numbers for Saratoga, California. Now, we start with the inventory numbers, and as we can see, it's another community that tends to fight the trend of the county. We're seeing inventory numbers relatively down when compared to previous years. This is a good sign. Right now, we have inventory down 9.2% from the same time last year. So May of 2007 to May of 2008, inventory is down 9.2%. Now, as you look at this graph, keep in mind that we're just dealing with the month of May, all the way back to 1999. So we're comparing just May to May. No seasonal influences at all here. For a total homes on the market right now in May of 2008 of 109. Now, next, let's take a look at the number of new homes listed. These are homes that were put on the market during the month of May. And we can see some relatively flat performance when compared to last year. Between 2007 and 2008, we actually had an increase of 6.3% in listings, which gave us a total homes listed in May of 2008 of 51. Now, the next most important number is sales, and we can see here we've actually had some disappointing performance this particular year. We're actually down. We're actually at the lowest point we've been since 2003. We had a total, all told, we had a decrease of 37.5% from 2007, from May of 2007 to May of 2008. That gave us a grand total of 25 homes sold in Saratoga for May of 2008. Now, if we do a little math on that and we compare the amount of inventory to the number of homes sold, if the number of homes in inventory were to freeze right now and we continued to sell at the current rate, it would take us 4.36 months to sell off our entire inventory. Now, this is a number, this ratio is something I pay a lot of attention to. If you've listened to any of my other market analysis video presentations, you know that. And you also probably know that I don't usually start worrying about it till we get at 4.5 or higher on this particular number. So I don't think it's anything to get terribly concerned about. It's definitely something to keep our eyes on in the coming months, but it's not something to get overly concerned about, particularly when we see some of the other numbers that we'll be looking at here for Saratoga in just a moment. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at these same numbers now just going back to March of 2007. So we're just going back month to month now, sort of getting an idea of what the seasonal influences are, and also hopefully getting a little bit of insight into what we can expect from future months. Now, as you can see, back in December was when we had our lowest point with inventory. Surprisingly, we had fairly good sales at that time. In fact, on par with earlier that year in times like September, which is a little bit unusual. Usually there's not a lot of shopping going on in the winter months, which is one reason why people take their homes off the market. Then January comes around and everyone jumps back into the market, and that's definitely demonstrated by this particular graph. Now, between April and May, the inventory actually increased 7.9%. You can also see that the homes that were listed increased, and that was a total increase of 6.3%. And sales from month to month between April and May of 2008 dropped by 13.8%. Now, that's a little disappointing considering we would like to see a little bit more growth. If you look at last year between April and May, we saw a little bit of growth as we headed further into what's normally considered the selling season. But you'll also see that the selling season dropped a little bit last year in June, July, and August. Now, that's because we really got sort of a shortened summer season last year. And that was something that was countywide. We can see Saratoga also suffered from that. But it didn't really affect prices as much, which we'll see in a minute. So what can we expect in the coming months? Well, we're seeing slightly different performance than we did last year. As I said, with sales between April and May, there was an increase last year. This year, we're seeing a dip. Whether this is a trend or not, we'll be able to see a little bit more clearly with next month's numbers. But if we do get performance similar to last year, from May until June, we would actually expect a drop in sales. But we'd also expect inventory to drop. Now, between April and May of last year, we also saw an inventory drop during that period of time. And this year, we're seeing an inventory increase. So since we're seeing so many numbers that are sort of heading in opposite directions from each other when compared to the same time last year, it makes me wonder if we're not seeing a different sort of market presenting itself here in Saratoga right now. As again, I think next month's numbers will be very interesting. It'll be interesting to see where we go from here if the inventory numbers continue to rise like this and sales numbers continue to drop, it could be that the problem we've seen throughout the county is starting to hit Saratoga in a way it really hasn't before. Now, next, let's take a look at home prices. Obviously, one of the more important numbers sellers are worried about at this time of year. This is going back previous years again, just comparing the month of May from 1999 all the way to 2008. Now, the average home price is actually down. It's down 0.4%. That comes out to about a loss of $7,645. So in the big picture, it's not a substantial drop, but it's still down versus we've seen historically pretty good performance in Saratoga as far as maintaining values. We're still seeing that since this isn't a substantial drop. But the average home price in Saratoga for May of 2008 was $1,900,836 with a median of $1,810,000. So, and the median just basically is a number that sits right in the middle of the number of homes that's sold. It's not an average. It sits right in the middle. So if 100 homes sold or 101 homes sold, you'd pick that number, the home that sold for $1,810,000, and 50 homes that sold were above that point and 50 homes that sold were below that point. So it gives you an idea where the distribution of sales is, and we can see from that the distribution is a bit below the average. It's a little bit more below the average, but not on par with years like 2000, where the majority of homes were selling far below the average price in that year. Now, the median price change was actually an increase of 0.1%, and that gave us about a $2,500 change in the median. Now, the highest priced single-family residential home in Saratoga was on Montwood Drive, and that sold for $3,300,000. Its list price was $3,500,000, so it only sold for a little bit under its asking price, and it was on the market for a total of 39 days, which is very respectable. Now, the other home that sold, this was the lowest priced home in Saratoga, was on Afton Avenue. And this is bordering the 85. That sold for $785,700, and its list price originally was $939,950, excuse me. And the total days on market for that home was 156 days. And the biggest problem with that home, I think, was pricing. It just wasn't really priced to move correctly, and it stayed on the market as a result of that. Now, the average price per square foot of all the homes that sold was $719.12, and the average days on market for all the homes that sold was 70. Now, we're seeing a lot of homes that sold in the month of May that had been on the market for an extended period of time, hundreds of days in some cases. So that's a little bit skewed, but the spread is right. I mean, we've seen homes that are selling in a few days, in a couple of weeks, and homes that have just stuck on the market for an extended period of time. And I think a lot of that has to do with sellers not getting very good information. They need to make sure and get a very solid market analysis to determine what the price, the value of the home is in today's market. And the bottom line is folks need to get their homes marketed well. It needs to be put in front of many people as possible. And you need to make sure you've got a real estate agent who's doing that kind of thing for you. Now, in comparison, when you compare the price per square foot, that sort of thing, to active homes that are currently listed, actually a pretty close comparison. The price per square foot for the active homes on average is $776.22. That's really only about a $50-some-odd difference between the homes that are selling and the homes that are on the market. So that's actually fairly respectable. So we'd expect a little bit more movement, perhaps, on the part of homes that are currently on the market. Now, the current average asking price for a home that has not sold yet, that's currently active, is $2,859,088. Clearly, that's quite a bit more expensive than the average price for the homes that have sold, well, about $1 million over. So clearly, we've got some homes at the high end here that are currently active to raise that average, and it could be that some of those just aren't priced correctly. It could also be that there just isn't more action at the higher end of the scale for some of these homes that are being marketed today. Now, also, the average days on market for all of the active homes in Saratoga right now is 107 days, so about 37 days more than the homes that have sold. Sort of to calibrate to how long some of these properties have been around. Now, what's interesting is that, as I said, there are homes that are currently on the market that have been on the market for 160 days, 280 days, 350 days. So definitely some attention needs to be paid to those properties that are just languishing without really getting much attention. Now, home prices for the past months, we'll go ahead and take a look at this again. We're looking back to March of 2007, and we're looking for trends. We're looking for things that can kind of give us a little bit of a heads up into what's going to happen in the future for home prices in Saratoga. First, let's cover some of the basics. The percentage price change between April and May of 2008 was an increase of 11.7%. So in the very short term, since March, we've seen steady increases in the average sales price. Median price is up on par with that, up about 11.3%. And again, we had a total homes sold of 25 in the month of May. If we go ahead and take now a look at the days to sell, now this is past years, we can see that we are at pretty much an all-time high for this time of year. For May of 2008, we're currently at 64 days, it is how many days it's been taking to sell the homes that were sold in the month of May. And that's basically a 73% increase from the same time last year. That's an increase of 27 days. But again, remember the stretch we've got here. We have homes that sold, the lowest amount of days that a home was on the market in May of 2008 was 6. There was a home that was on the market for just 6 days. The longest days on market for some of the homes that sold was 354 days. And again, there were other homes that were 200 and something days, 100 and something days. More homes were huddled right around the middle and low end of that. So this definitely skews the days on market number, since you get some homes that have just been on there for so long. But I think it accentuates the importance of focusing on getting your marketing right, getting your pricing right, because if you don't, your home's going to stay on the market for an extremely long time. Now, days to sell, just in the past months, again, going back to March of 2007, we can see that while it's a high number, it's in comparison to going over the past year, we get a lot of variation in Saratoga on the days on the market. The days to sell between April and May increased by 20.8%. That's a total of 11-day increase from one month to the next. Normally, we would expect in this time of year to see these numbers going down. Take a look at last year. From March to April to May, a steady decrease. From March to April to May this year, a steady increase. Now, that's definitely going against what we'd expect for the season. We're into the time when things are tending to move a little bit more quickly, simply because there's more buyers out there, or if there are buyers at all, this is when they tend to be active, and we're seeing the exact opposite of what we would expect. If we go by what we saw last year, what we would expect to happen right after May is for the number of days on the market to increase in June. I'm not sure that's going to happen, because we've seen such a total reversal of the trends that we normally see, or at least what we saw last year. It may be that we just see this number sort of stabilizing. It may even go down a little bit. I find it hard to believe that it was going to go much higher than that. It would be very surprising to me if the days on market in Saratoga got to the point where they started to rival winter numbers, which is really where we're almost to. Since 76 days in February was really what we'd call our last winter month as far as real estate numbers are concerned for Saratoga. December, January, and February are typically the highest. But look at last year in July, a number of 95. Now, if we go and we look, a lot of times what's happening in those times of year when we get a higher days on market number is because homes that have been sitting on the market forever are skewing the numbers higher, because they're just selling when homes tend to sell, but they've just been on the market forever. So that can, particularly when you have a sample size as small as 25, 30, 20 homes, just a couple of homes that are extremely high in numbers on these can really throw things off. So if we sort of normalize the strange curve we see here, I think you have to argue we're definitely seeing a strange trend now from March till May, and from March till May when compared to March till May of last year. But if we normalize some of the extreme peaks, and if we look closer at that data, we see that some of this is getting skewed by homes that have been on the market for an extremely long time. But even after doing that, we are still seeing a generalized increase in days on market now versus a generalized decrease last year. So, as I said, the numbers that we see next month will help us to understand this a little bit more. Anytime we see something like this, it tells me that we have a market that's in transition. What we're going to transition to is a little bit of a question. Since so many other areas have now reached the point where inventory numbers seem to be stabilizing and things seem to be normalizing a bit, I'm not anticipating a big change for Saratoga. I don't think anything dramatic is going to happen, but we could see sort of a flattening in general, and that might indicate that we might see prices either sort of flattening or even dipping a little bit more, as we've seen with some of the numbers in this particular month of May 2008. All right, I appreciate you all taking the time to listen to my presentations on the markets in the various parts of Silicon Valley. As always, if you have any ideas, suggestions, observations, or anything like that, I'd love to hear about them. There's a lot of ways to get in touch with me. If you'd like to read my articles on real estate or listen to my other video presentations on markets within Santa Clara County, or listen to my podcast, which I produce weekly. You can get those at www.soldbyrobert.com. If you'd like to email me with any comments or suggestions, please feel free to do that at robert@soldbyrobert.com. If you'd like to call me relating to real estate or anything you might be interested in talking about, feel free to do that at 408-852-0525. If you'd prefer to chat online, you can often find me using AOL Instant Messenger, Google Talk, or Yahoo Instant Messenger, and my screen name is The Rebel Broker. You can also find me on Skype using screen name Rebel Broker. And of course, referrals are always appreciated. If you or anyone you know is interested in buying or selling real estate in Silicon Valley, please get in touch with me using any of the methods above, and I'll be happy to help any way I can. Thank you very much, and I look forward to talking to you next time.